I followed a monster through the town that tried to kill my father. I don't remember much from my childhood. Just vague flashes of a small town south of Krakow, where I lived with my mom, dad, and 2 sisters. But I do remember the Polish Harvest Festival, going door to door with my sisters, begging for leftover candy from neighbors who always bought too much. We'd laugh, run between houses, and end the day with a ridiculous pile of sweets spread across our kitchen floor. Everyone in the neighborhood knew us, the Dabrowski kids. They'd greet us with affectionate curses, calling us little troublemakers with grins on their faces. But those happy memories are only happy because they have something darker to contrast with. My parents eventually separated. My mom took us to Warsaw, closer to our extended family. My father, Yarmir, stayed behind. He tried to remain in our lives, sending money, calling, showing up when he could. But the visits became rarer. Easter, then Christmas, then our birthdays, one by one, those connections faded. Eventually, he disappeared altogether. Life moved on. My sisters left, one to Zagreb, the other to Munich. My mom remarried and moved north to her vacation home. I stayed in Warsaw, got a degree in sociology, and landed a dreary government job at government office, handling insurance claims. The work was soul-numbing, but it paid the bills. Then, on the year I turned 24, I got a letter. My father had died. Not recently, the accident had happened years ago. A case of farm equipment, no will, no priority, and so the paperwork had just sat somewhere until someone finally pushed it through. His estate was to be divided. My younger sister got his savings. The older got his valuables. Me. I got the house. I called them, asked if anyone wanted to visit the grave. No one did. They'd written him off. But I hadn't. I always thought he'd just worked too hard. That he'd disappeared under the weight of life, not by choice. So I took time off, got in my car, and headed south to see what was left of the past, of my father, of the town, and of a home I could barely remember. It was a long drive. The roads were cracked, barely maintained. The town, no more than 250 people, was hidden in fields of wheat and dust. 2 buildings stood out, a store and a church. Everything else was fading into memory. There were no road signs. I found the exit only because I recognized the distant outline of the old church. I parked outside. Smaller than I remembered. And as I stepped out of the car, the smells and sounds came flooding back, not clear, not sharp, but enough to remind me, this is where I used to belong. "Welcome," someone called out. I turned. A man stood nearby, maybe a few years older than me, wearing a priest's robe and thick glasses. "I'm Father Cherniak," he smiled. "Are you new in town?" "I grew up here," I said. "I'm one of the Dabrowski kids." He wasn't familiar with the name. He'd only taken over last winter. The previous priest, Golik, the one from my childhood, had lived to 101. He gave me a tour of the church. Spoke of his plans to repair the stained glass, revive old traditions. But one thing was clear, the church had no doors. "Every time I try to put them back up," he sighed, "someone takes them down. Says the shepherd must never close the gate to his flock." That was new to me. I didn't remember anything about that growing up. "Strange," I said. "You don't remember? I thought you were from around here." "I guess. I've just been gone too long, Father." He nodded, then led me to the cemetery. My father's grave was vandalized. The headstone had been knocked over. No flowers. Something had happened here. Something I didn't understand. It was a long drive. The roads out there aren't great, just narrow strips of cracked asphalt slicing through endless wheat fields. You wouldn't even know where to turn if you missed the tiny dirt path that leads into town. No signs. Just the faint silhouette of a church on the horizon. As I turned off the main road and rattled toward the village, a wave of uneasy familiarity hit me. The smells, the light, the stillness. Even if you can't recall the details, your body remembers where it came from. I decided to visit the church first. There was plenty of parking. It looked smaller than I remembered, but that's how childhood places tend to be. A voice greeted me as I stepped out. "Welcome," someone called. "Sorry about the state of things." A man a few years older than me walked up. Well-combed hair. Thick glasses. He was wearing a priest's robe. "I'm Father Cherniak," he said. "Are you new in town, or just passing through?" "I grew up here," I replied. "One of the Dabrowski kids." "Sorry, doesn't ring a bell," he smiled. "I only arrived last winter to replace Father Golick." "He lived until last winter." I blinked. 101 years old, he said proudly. God has quite the sense of humor. Father Cherniak gave me a quick tour. He talked about replacing stained glass and replanting flower beds, but what bothered him most were the doors. The church had none. "It's a local superstition," he explained. "Every time I put the doors up, someone takes them down." "No doors?" I frowned. "That's new." "Strange," he said. "I thought you were from here." "I guess I've been gone too long, Father." He showed me my father's grave before I left. It had been vandalized. The headstone had toppled over. No flowers. Nothing but weeds and dirt. It didn't make sense. We were never a hated family, at least, not that I knew. I promised myself I'd fix it before I left. Then I drove across town. What I saw made my stomach turn. The drive was long. The roads out there weren't built for comfort, more like for memories and silence. The village hadn't changed much. Maybe 250 people. Mostly wheat farmers. Outside of that, there were only two buildings that stood out, a store and a church. Endless fields lined both sides of the road, lulling me into such a rhythm I nearly missed the exit. No signs, no billboards. Just an old church spire on the horizon as a landmark. I took a sharp left and prayed the suspension would hold out a little longer. I decided to stop by the church first. We'd spent a lot of time there when I was a kid. The parking lot was empty. Everything felt smaller than I remembered. Maybe that's just what time does. There's something uneasy about coming back to a place that once knew you. As I stepped out of the car, it all came rushing back, the smells, the sound of gravel, even the way the wind wrapped itself around you. Something in the air whispered, "You belong here." "Welcome," a voice called out. "Sorry about the, state of things." A man approached. Mid-30s maybe, neat hair, glasses, and a well-worn priest's collar. "I'm Father Cherniak," he said, extending a hand. "Passing through, or new in town?" "I'm one of the Dabrowski kids," I said. "I grew up here." "Oh," he replied, blinking. "Sorry, I'm still getting to know everyone. I only arrived last winter. Took over from Father Golick." "He lived until last winter?" I asked, surprised. 101, he said, grinning. God must have really liked the guy. We shared a short laugh, and he gave me a quick tour of the chapel. He talked about repairs, his hopes for restoring the stained glass, and one problem that kept bothering him, the doors. They were missing. Not just unlocked. Gone. Every time I replace them, he said, someone takes them down again. I raised a brow. Is that a joke? It's a local superstition. Something about how a shepherd shouldn't put a gate between himself and his flock. Never heard of that one, I muttered. You sure you're from around here? Guess I've been gone too long, Father. The church looked vulnerable. Naked. The wind had torn down every curtain he tried to hang in their place. Gravel tracked over the threshold like nobody bothered to wipe their feet. Before I left, Father Cherniak showed me my father's grave. It had been desecrated. The headstone was tipped over. No flowers. Just cracked stone and bitter silence. I promised I'd fix it before I left. But I didn't understand. Sure, our family had its issues, but this? This looked like someone hated him. I drove toward my childhood home. And I wasn't ready for what I saw next. I wasn't prepared for what I saw when I got into town. Every house, every building, it was like someone had deliberately erased privacy. There were no doors. Not open. Removed. Gone. At first, I thought it was some kind of community project or renovation, but then I noticed something stranger. Every doorway led straight into a fully furnished, fully lived-in home. Families were inside, walking around, cooking, talking, as if the walls themselves had decided to turn inside out. No doors on the bathrooms. No doors on the bedrooms. A few homes had hung curtains or nets in the doorways, but not a single door in the entire town. Some homes had bricked up their front entrances completely, forcing residents to climb in through windows. A few had welcome mats placed next to the house, like entry had become abstract. It was unsettling. Then I pulled into the driveway of the house that used to be mine. And I gasped. I couldn't recognize it. The entire place had been vandalized. Every window smashed. Doors missing. Trash and debris scattered across the yard. Rats skittered along the porch. The swing set we used to play on was nothing but rusted metal bars. And someone had spray painted across the house in neon green, Devil's Sun. I walked around the property in stunned silence. I couldn't even remember how the place used to look. My childhood home had become something ugly, rotting. And with it, the memories inside me began to curdle. As I came around the front, a group of middle-aged men were standing at the edge of the lawn, eyeing my car. I didn't recognize any of them. "You at the bank?" one asked. "No. I'm the Dabrowski kid," I answered. "The son." The reaction was immediate. "You're the son," he spit. "You want to join him in hell, is that it?" I pointed to the house. "You know who did this? Was it you?" "Could have been anyone," someone in the back muttered. "Fucker deserved it." Another gave a nod toward the graffiti. They muttered among themselves and then walked off, chuckling and cursing under their breath. Not quite the welcome I had imagined. I was supposed to sleep here. But there was no way I was spending the night in that house. It was trashed, violated. I didn't even want to step through the threshold. So instead, I curled up in my car with a blanket and tried to get some rest. But sleep never came. The sunset was beautiful, though. The one part of this place that hadn't changed. I watched it dip below the wheat fields just like it used to, casting golden shadows through the same dusty horizon. Around 2 a.m., I woke up. No sound. No cold. Just a sudden awareness. Like I was supposed to be awake. At first I thought it was nothing. Maybe a rabbit, maybe a breeze. But then, somewhere in the far-off dark, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A wail. Low. Sorrowful. Like someone had taken the sound of heartbreak and made it echo. Something was out there. And whatever it was crying. I couldn't sleep that night. The encounter with the blind one, if that's really what it was, left my thoughts spiraling. The idea of him searching door to door, hoping to return to wherever he came from, was terrifying. But it also made him feel lost. Desperate. Not purely evil, but misdirected. At dawn, I packed what I could and drove to the edge of town. That's when I saw it. The church. There was a white van parked outside, and two men were on ladders, working on something that made my stomach sink. They were reattaching the church doors. I slammed the brakes. Father Cherniak spotted me and waved enthusiastically. Before my boots could even touch the gravel, he was beside me. "Welcome back," he smiled. "Glad to see you haven't left us yet." I blinked. "What are you doing?" "You inspired me," he said earnestly. For an outsider, this place must have looked awful. I saw it, you know. I saw it in your face. He turned to the doors being installed. It must be dignified. Our Lady deserves better, don't you think? I hesitated. This is a bad idea. Father Cherniak placed a hand on my shoulder. If the Lord's house can't shelter you from the devil, what can? I couldn't argue. I was cold. I was tired. And he offered me a hot meal and a real bed in exchange for some light work. After nights in my car, I accepted. As the day passed, people began to arrive. Some came just to insult the priest and tell him he was foolish. A few threw rocks at the doors. Others, however, started to come around. They were tired of fear. And they were tired of hiding. There was even a cookout. By sundown, the churchyard was alive with laughter, music, and the smell of grilled sausages. It felt like the Polish festival of my youth, briefly. Even the two teenagers showed up, sneaking wine from someone's backpack. Later that evening, Father Cherniak gave a sermon. Most of it drifted past me, I was too exhausted to focus, but one part stuck. The door is a threshold. Between sin and saint. Between what we hide from, and what we must face. That sermon became a challenge. A test of faith. And then, the test arrived. Just after midnight. There was a knock. 2 knocks. Then the door handle pulled. A loud creak echoed through the church. The blind one had arrived. Father Cherniak stood firm. This is no place for sons of sin, he declared. There is nothing for you here. It stopped. We waited. Then the screaming began again. Louder. Angrier. The door cracked and groaned. Someone in the back yelled, "The door's coming down." Panic. Chaos. The congregation rushed to escape through the back. I was shoved aside, nearly trampled. No one cared who I was. Not even if I survived. Father Cherniak tried to calm the crowd, to no avail. There is no sin in the house of the Lord, he shouted. There is no sin. The devil can jeer, but he cannot. Crack. The doors burst inward. Candles blew out. Shadows danced. The blind one entered. The doors hit the floor with a thunderous crash. Silence fell, just for a breath. Then all hell broke loose. People screamed, scrambling over one another to escape through the side room. The chandeliers swayed overhead. Candles flickered and died. And there he was, the blind one, standing tall in the entrance of the Lord's house. I ducked behind a pew. I caught only glimpses, twisted limbs, long arms scraping the floor. His shape was wrong. Wrapped in heavy fabric or maybe skin, I couldn't tell. One of his arms grew from the middle of his back, and the other dangled far too long, dragging behind like a whip. He didn't walk. He glided, like gravity didn't apply. Pews shattered under his touch. People cried out. Someone slipped. A woman screamed for her child. Another tried to lift a man too old to run. It didn't matter, the blind one wasn't chasing them. He was searching. Tearing the place apart. The priest had tried to hide behind the altar. But the blind one climbed on top of it with terrifying grace, towering above Father Cherniak like a puppet master over a doll. The priest begged. He demanded. He prayed. And the blind one listened. Then opened his jaw, wide, too wide, and with a wet snap, it was over. Blood sprayed the altar. A thud. A head rolled. Glasses bounced across the floor. I crawled, dragging myself across the ground, keeping low and quiet. I didn't breathe. The blind one moved with feather-light steps, tiptoeing like a dancer through ruin. I didn't even hear him come up behind me. Until his shadow swallowed me whole. I rolled onto my back. He was towering above me. Massive. Horrifying. I could see his face now. A gray, half-made thing. Sunken black eyes that dipped inward like sinkholes. Skin like scaled paper. A mouth that almost looked human, except it kept twitching. Sniffing. Tasting the air. Something still dripped from his chin. He leaned closer. He was going to eat me. But then, he stopped. A sound escaped him, a soft, uncertain trill. A confused rattle. He tilted his head like a curious animal and gently put me back down. He turned away. As he dragged his long fingers across the floor, the violent wailing returned, but softer. Confused. Mourning. He left the church just as quietly as he'd entered. Not running. Not attacking. Just, gone. And then came the aftermath. People with guns. Some blaming the priest. Others packing up to flee the town forever. Me. I went back to my father's house. I needed answers. I went room by room through my father's house. Kicking open closets. Tearing down drawers. Flipping every piece of furniture I could get my hands on. I needed something, anything, to explain what had happened. What he had done. Or maybe, what he had tried to prevent. I was looking for the truth. The house was barely standing. Rot and fire had carved it hollow. But I kept searching. In the backyard, I stared at the old swing set. The chains had been clipped, and the rusted frame stood like a skeleton. I remembered the sound of those chains. Once, it was joy. Now, it was the soundtrack of something broken. Something that had ended here. I don't know how long I lost control. I just remember punching a section of the kitchen wall where the fire had eaten away at it. My fist didn't meet resistance. There was something there, a hidden panel beneath the sink. I'd punched through it without realizing. Sitting back on the wet grass, I dug around inside until I pulled out a scorched, half-rotten box. Inside, fragments of memory. Family photo albums. Pictures of me and my sisters. My dad's first car. Images from our childhood printed from Facebook and framed like treasures. Pages and pages of a forgotten life. But then the photos stopped. No more birthdays. No more smiles. Instead, notes. Polaroids of a single wooden door. Over and over. Notes scrawled on the back. It's not screaming, it's crying. He's afraid. He's lost. No one listens. He wants to go home. More and more notes, rambling thoughts, my father trying to understand something no human should try to understand. He brings elk from the woods. We share meals. He learns fast. There's nothing left for him here. I understand. And the last one. I will let him sleep in the house. Maybe it'll help his night terrors. A monster with night terrors. A father who saw not a demon, but something abandoned. Something scared. Something trying to go home. I didn't know what happened after that. Maybe the blind one misunderstood. Maybe the nightmares came true. Maybe my dad tried to stop him, and failed. But if my father had tried to help this thing, if he truly believed it could be saved, then I had to know for sure. I couldn't hate him until I knew. So I went back into town. I walked through town like a ghost. The panic from the church had mostly died down. People were either hiding or gone. Those who stayed locked their windows, buried their heads, and whispered prayers behind doorless walls. But I wasn't looking for people. I was looking for him. I found the blind one back at the brick wall. He stood before it like a priest before an altar. Wailing quietly. Pulling gently on handles that would never turn. Tap. Tap. A mournful rhythm. A ritual. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. He was lost. I stepped forward. He didn't turn. Didn't snarl or growl. Just swayed softly in the moonlight. I knew what I had to do. Follow me, I said. He did. We walked together through the dead streets. His footsteps barely made a sound. That long arm dragging behind, his breath wet and ragged. The cemetery waited. We reached the grave. My father's grave. The headstone still knocked over. Forgotten. Just like him. I pointed. Here, I said. Father. The blind one didn't hesitate. He fell to his knees and tore the earth open like paper. Handfuls of dirt flung aside like leaves. He was strong, so strong, but gentle. He dug until the casket showed. It wasn't a real casket. Just a box. And the lid, my heart stopped. It was our front door. The same door they'd removed. The same one the blind one had searched for. He touched it like it was holy. Fingers trembling. His wailing turned to a hum, low and slow. He opened the lid and lifted the body inside with reverence. My father. Broken. Dried. Bones and dust. The blind one cradled him. Held him like a child holds a toy they thought they'd lost. And he whispered, over and over. Tata. Tata. Then he stood. And walked into the woods. He didn't look back. No screams. No rage. Just silence. The town didn't chase him. They didn't try. Because they knew. He'd found his door. I sold my father's house. Burned what I had to. Kept the photo albums. The blind one was never seen again. The town still hates the name Dabrowski, but they don't whisper it with fear anymore. Only bitterness. No more knocking. No more disappearances. The wall still stands. But the doors? They're just wood now. Back in Warsaw, sometimes I catch myself listening for the faintest sound in the night. But it's quiet. Truly quiet. And I think maybe, just maybe, he made it home.